Alternative Energy by Jessica Jedrzak. According to OxfordDictionaries.com, alternative energy is energy fueled in ways that do not use up the Earth's natural resources or otherwise harm the environment, especially by avoiding the use of fossil fuels or nuclear power. Many people know or have heard the term alternative energy, including scientists, teachers, and lay people, just like students like me. Alternative energy does not use up the Earth's natural resources. There are two types of alternative energies, non-renewable and renewable. Renewable is some natural resources that could be reproduced within a few years or decades. For example, trees. Non-renewable energy are resources that take thousands or can even take millions of years to be made. For example, oil. Non-renewable and renewable resources have to be used wisely. If they're used or thrown out, resources can become scarce. When this happens, prices go up, including products that also use non-renewable and renewable resources. Those prices go up as well. Sometimes they become so rare that they cannot be used at all. This is why alternative energy is so important. There are many different types of alternative energies. This is good because it is clean and harmless, and they won't run out because it is using natural resources around on the planet. The different types of alternative energies are solar, which uses the sun to create energy; hydropower, which uses water and creates dams, and that creates energy; wind, which uses windmills; biomass, which, if you could see, is a cycle that uses CO2 in trees, and then they transport that to power plants, and the power plants then create electricity, which is then converted back into CO2, and that cycle goes on and on and on. Geothermal is using the Earth's magma and pulling that heat up to create energy to use as electricity for things on the Earth's surface. And lastly, hydrogen alternative energy. Hydrogen is the simplest element. It is an atom with one proton and one electron. It is the most plentiful element on this planet. It does not occur naturally, however. You usually do not see hydrogen just laying around on the planet. It usually is combined with something else. For example, oxygen. Hydrogen and oxygen is H2O, which, for example, is water. The mass of hydrogen is 1.00794, so it is the simplest and smallest element and is number 1 on the periodic table. According to RenewableEnergyWorld.com, hydrogen is also found in many organic compounds, notably the hydrocarbons that make up many of our fuels, such as gasoline, natural gases, methanol, and even propane. Hydrogen can be separated from hydrocarbons through the application of heat, a process known as reforming. The process of reforming looks very hard to understand, but it is basically just using hydrogen and using heat to separate the products of hydrogen. Currently, most hydrogen is made this way from natural gas. Hydrogen is high in energy, yet an engine that burns pure hydrogen produces almost no pollution compared to many of the other different things that creates lots of pollution, which then in turn hurts our environment. Hydrogen fuel cells are what makes hydrogen into energy. In the book, Technology and Society, used in class, it has a chapter on fuel cells and hydrogen economy. To sum up what they say about fuel cells, a fuel cell combines hydrogen and oxygen to produce energy and electricity, heat, and water. Fuel cells are often compared to batteries. Both convert the energy produced by a chemical reaction into reusable electric power. However, the fuel cell will reproduce electricity as long as fuel, like hydrogen, is supplied, never losing its charge, compared to a battery, which can be very time-consuming in recharging that. Here is a picture of hydrogen fuel cell. Hydrogen goes in, water goes out, oxygen goes in on that side, and energy is output. To explain it more simply, here's a short clip.
A single PEM fuel cell is made up of 2 plates, 2 electrodes, and 2 thin layers of platinum-based catalyst, separated by a plastic membrane, which, when fed with the fuel, reacts electrochemically to create electricity. Hydrogen from an onboard storage tank and oxygen from air are fed through channels in the plates. Hydrogen flows on one side of the membrane, air on the other. The catalyst splits the hydrogen molecule into protons and electrons. The protons can pass through the membrane. The electrons cannot, and have to pass through an external circuit, creating useful electricity. On the oxygen side of the membrane, the protons and the electrons react with oxygen from the air in the presence of a second catalyst layer, generating water and heat. By stacking together single cells, like slices in a loaf of bread, you make a fuel cell stack to produce the required amount of power.
According to the book, Technology and Society by Linda Horth, it states how fuel cells come with advantages and disadvantages. The pros of a fuel cell are increased thermal efficiency, producing electricity for longer periods of time, generation of power with little pollution, operates with a low noise level, and finally, it can quickly recharge by refueling compared to batteries that require time-consuming recharge. Along with pros from a fuel cell battery, there are also some cons of a fuel cell battery. The cons are higher costs than conventional systems. It takes a lot more money to produce fuel cells than just using normal batteries. The durability of a fuel cell are not yet established. Since it is newer, it has not been determined how long these fuel cells can last. Platinum group metals used for catalyzing reactions are expensive, meaning the metals used to create the reactions for the fuel cells are very expensive, and it takes a lot more time and money to produce these fuel cells, which are less harmful for the environment. So the question is it worth it? Is it worth using more time and more money to create less harmful battery type items to produce the electricity and power our world needs? Or do we keep using the batteries and stuff that create damage for our environment? Now, looking back at all the different types of alternative energies, not just hydrogen energy, we have a different set of pros and cons. The pros of alternative energy. The sun, wind, geothermal, ocean energy are available in an abundant quality and are free to be used at almost all times. They will not run out unless the planet, for some reason, stops. The non-renewable sources of energy that we are using are limited and bound, which are another reason alternative energy is the way to go. Renewable sources have low carbon emissions, therefore green and environmentally friendly. It is good for our environment and it is good for our planet. Renewable helps stimulating the economy and creating jobs for people.